Hello and welcome to this introduction to materials in Unreal Engine 4. Today we're just going to be messing around with the material heads a little, going through a couple of basic nodes, understanding the interface a little bit so we understand exactly what we're doing to get to the end product. If you want to open up Unreal Engine 4, I'm currently using 4.9 for this video, but it shouldn't change too much between versions, but if it does, this is the version that I'm using. So if you want to go to your content browser, right click and select material and click it, or if you want to do it via the content browser itself, you go to the top left corner, click add new, select material. Now you want to give your material a name that corresponds with the material you're actually creating. So you can see here on my screen I've got, ground underscore dry desert ground, because that is a ground texture that is a dry desert, stuff like that. So if you wanted to create a laser material, laser matte or something, you need a name to remember the material by. If you create wacky wave inflatable arm flame tube man, then if it's not a wacky wave inflatable arm flame tube man material and you don't know what it is, then you're going to lose it. But for this material, getting back on topic, I'm going to call mine tut underscore matte, just for the purposes of this. But call yours whatever you want. You can call it wacky bone inflatable arm flame tube man if you really feel the need to do so. So double click it, and we're going to get the material editor. Now there's a couple of things on the screen here to go through first. So we have the main material node inside the editor graph space. We have the preview window for the material that we're working on. And you can change the mode, so you can set a cylinder, a sphere, a plane, a square, or a mesh if you select a mesh in the settings. And down here you have your properties. So this big node here is the main material node, and it's where all the as it says there in the overlay, the final material inputs are going to go into. So all the nodes that you put into this editor space will eventually connect to one of these pins. Now these pins they change depending on the settings you define in your properties. So at the moment we have a surface material, it's opaque, it's got a default lit model. So we have these pins activated, and you can tell they're activated because they're white, and ones that you cannot connect to are grey. Just can't touch them. But say we wanted to make, we wanted some of these pins for what we needed. Well, you need to define it in your settings. So let's go over these one by one. So in the material domain, you can set the materials attributes to describe the 3D surface. So the surface attribute is what I'd say 95% of your materials that you're going to make in Unreal Engine 4 are. They're just materials. That's all they are. They're materials to add to models, to put on brush work, for prototyping. That's what they are. Materials born and bred. But then you got others. So you got deferred decor. So you want to make a pile of junk on the floor, but you don't want like a square image. You want the outline of the junk to overlay onto the floor. Well, you can, with deferred decor, if I click it, I then get the opacity pin come active, and then I can change the opacity of certain parts to be able to allow for the decal to sit on the ground nice and tight. So we've got light function. That's to do with lights, it's changing the way that lights display themselves in a world. Post-processing effects or materials, so it's like overlaying stuff on when you're in a post-processing volume, or if you want to do it all the time, you can attach it to the player, or via blueprint you can activate it, and it's all very cool. And then user interfaces, obviously, with UMG and Slate. And then we have the blend mode. So opaque means there's no light's going to go through it. It's always going to bounce. So it's a solid surface. And then masked and translucent. Translucent is easiest to explain first. So I'll explain that first. Translucent is like, so you want a ball of glass. In order to do that, you need to be able to see through the material. So with translucent, you can set the opacity of the material to be able to see through. And masked is, say you have Let's see, a good example. So you have a window. There's not actually a window, it's just a texture, but you have a window and you want to be able to see out the window, but obviously you don't want them to be able to see out the entire image of the window. You don't want them to see out the, you know, the wooden struts in the middle of the window that's like making a frame or something. So you create a mask, and that mask will stop the translucency happening over those wooden posts, an opacity mask. And then you have additive and modulate. Not too sure what they are, so I'm not going to go into them. And then default lit is the default lighting model. You know, it's just how, it's just default. It's default, it's there. Unlit, we went over in the Space Skybox tutorial. Unlit means there's no light's going to affect it, nothing at all. I'm not going to go over the others because I'm not too sure of how they work, and it will get into too much there. To make a material, let's start with constants. Now, constants are very, very useful. You'll probably be using them a hell of a lot in creating materials in the future. I had a question on YouTube asking why I put 10, a factor of 10, into a node. And I did that with a constant. And the reason for that is because the good thing about constants are they're float values. In their basic premise, they're off and they're on. This is how I think of them anyway. They're off and they're on. So let's make a constant. Let's get a constant up on the screen so we can see what we're doing here. So if you want to right click, you can either go down to here where it says constants and select constant. You can type it up here, you know, constant, there it is. Or if you like your hotkeys, hold down 1 and left click, and there's a constant, bam, right there, right in front of your eyes. Now it says 0 at the moment, and you can't really tell what's going on with it because there's not much to it. It's just a pin, the 0, but there's this little arrow to expand it. So if you expand it, you see it's a black square, and that's off. That's off. But if we should change that to 1, if you give it a second, because my CPU's terrible, as I've always been told, it changes to white, and that would be on. Now, that's a basic premise of it. It's off or it's on. Now, but the way I did it was I put in a factor of 10. Now, that's not going to change to a whiter white because there's no whiter white. It would just be white again. But because it's a float value, it means you can input right. Okay. So an example, you want to make a very shiny material shinier. So by using specular, that's probably the best way to put it. So you have your texture. Say you have a texture here. Hang on. Let's just put this here. So you have your texture, right? Texture, lovely, right? Texture's here, and it's a specular texture because you already have your base texture here. So this is your texture for your specular. But you want this specular to stand out more. Just plugging it into specular is not going to cut it. So what you want to do is you could multiply it, right? So you go, right, I want to take this texture and put it into A, and I want to times the effect by 10, and then you plug it into specular, and that's how it would work, you know. And if it's still not as shiny as you want it to be, you can ramp it up. You can go, right, okay, that's not shiny enough. I want 100. You know, I want 1,000. You can keep ramping up because it's a float value, and that's the great thing about using constants, and it will become so much more useful as time goes on for you. But we're not going to go. But so that's a singular constant. There's also constant 2 vectors, which are red and green channels. I haven't used them much, and I don't see much point in teaching them in a basic way. But a constant 3 vector can be useful, especially when you just want to create like a color. So let's do that. So if we hold down 3 and left click, we get a constant 3 vector. So it has 3 numbers in it now. It's still black, but it's 3 numbers. And they represent the red, green, and blue channels. So say we wanted a red material. If we go over here to our settings or properties window, and we change the red channel to 255, it will change it to red. But hang on, it's only red in the node. It's not actually red over here on our preview, and that is because we haven't connected it to our base color. Now, normally you would look at the base color as the foundation for your material, things which are built on. So you have a texture that you want, just a basic texture. You'd plug it into base color normally. So if we connect those two up, I'll give it another few more seconds. There it is, a red texture. We can use that in editor right now. We could use it right now. But let's just go back to a constant for a second. So we go, right, okay, that's a nice colour, but I want some specular on it. Now, in order to do that, we need to plug in something to our specular map. So if we drag off the specular pin and type in constant, there's our constant. Now it's updating again, but if you wait, because it's set to 0, which means there's no value at all, the material is now turned to matte. Lighting still affects it. It will still have a shadow, but there's no shine to it. There's nowhere for the light to bounce into it and give a nice sort of, the best way to say it is shiny. It's not that shiny. So if we change this to, let's give a good nice number, let's say 100, right? So we're giving our constant node 100 value, and that's going into our specular node. And there you go, see, now it's got this nice crisp light bounce on it. We could change it. Don't know where the light is on that one, hang on. There you go, see, so got this nice sort of sheen to it. And there you go, there's your that's a basic material right there that you can use. But let's delve a bit further in. Now, a good way of exploring even more is messing around with emissive. I quite like emissive colours. So we have this red material, okay? So what we want to do is we want to create, a way for it to be a light to emanate from it, which is the emissive color node. So if we drag off this and create another constant, just a singular one, and we set its value to something like 10. Look, see, there you go. You got this nice sort of blinding light. But it's not the same color as our material. And that can be a problem because you don't really want that happening, unless that's your intended purpose. But then you won't be setting a base color in the first place to be red. So what we want to do is we want to delete this, and you can drag another pin off your constant free vector, and you can put that into the emissive color. And then you can, and there you go. You've got this blinding red material to use inside a level. So if we hit apply to apply the changes to the material, because if you don't do that, then it's not going to update the material in the editor. We're just going to quickly save this so it doesn't get lost. We close that. So there it is. It's now sat in our content browser. So let's have a look at changing this floor. So select this floor here, if you've, in fact, actually you might not have this level open. So what we'll do is we'll just create a quick cube. So if you want to go to BSP and then drag a box in, there you go. And if you do it while the material is selected, it will apply it with the material. So that is one very bright box now. Extremely bright. So if I was just to move this over here and click play, see what it does. So there you go. We now have a very very bright red cube in game, and that's a very, that's It's a very basic way of making materials, but it's a start, and it will help a lot. Just knowing those few fundamental things about making a material. So this has been an introduction to material creation in Unreal Engine 4. I'll put out another video next week actually, because there's a few more things I'd like to go over, but I don't really want to make this video too long. Next week we could start looking at maybe math expressions, coordinate expressions, and so on and so forth inside the material editor. But for now, this is pretty much, the basis of what you need to know when starting to understand just what the hell you're doing inside the material editor. You can just link up nodes and follow tutorials, but if you understand what you're putting together, you have a better understanding of what you're doing, and if something goes wrong, you know where it's going wrong. So thank you very much for watching this video. Like and share if you want. If I've helped at all, give me a like. Comment down in the down below the video, and I always try to reply to everyone. I know sometimes it appears I'm not replying, but I work quite a lot. Got a family, got projects to do, and then I've got this. So I do try to find the time to chat to everyone that comments on these videos. So I want to thank you to everyone who does. So thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.